The Twin Brothers. There was once a fisherman who had plenty of money, but no children. One day an old woman came to his wife and said,
"What use is all this prosperity to you if you have no children?"
"It's God's will," answered the fisherman's wife.
"Nay, my child, it's not God's will, but the fault of your husband. For if he had caught a little goldfish, he could surely have children. Tonight when he comes home, tell him he must go back and catch the little fish. He must cut it into 6 pieces. One of those you must eat, and your husband the second, as soon as you have 2 children. The 3rd piece you must give to the dog, and she will have 2 puppies. The 4th piece you must give to the mare, and she will have 2 foals. The 5th piece bury in the right of the house, and the 6th to the left. 2 cypress trees will spring up there."
When the fisherman came home that evening, his wife told him all the old woman had advised, and he promised to bring home the little gold fish. Next morning, therefore, he went very early to the water and caught the little fish. Then they did as the old woman had ordered, and in due time the fisherman's wife had 2 sons, so like each other that no one could tell the difference. The dog had 2 puppies exactly alike. The mare had the 2 foals, and on each side of the front door there sprang up the 2 cypress trees, precisely similar. When the 2 boys were grown up, they were not content to remain at home, though they had wealth and plenty, but they wished to go out to the world and make a name for themselves. Their father would not allow them to both go at once. They were the only children he had. He said, "First one shall travel, and when he is back, then the other may go." So the first one took his horse and his dog, and went saying to his brother, "So long as the cypress trees are green, that is a sign that I am alive and well. But if one begins to wither, then make haste and come to me." And so he went forth into the world. One day he stopped at the house of an old woman, and as the evening sat before the door, he perceived in front of him a castle standing on the hill. He asked the old woman to whom it belonged, and her answer was,
"My son, it is a castle of the fairest in the land."
"And I am come here to woo her."
"That, my son, many have thought to do, and lost their lives in the attempt, for she has cut off the heads and stuck them on the posts you see standing there."
"And the same she will do to me, or else I shall be victor, for tomorrow I go there to court her." Then he took a zither and played upon it so beautifully that no one in the land had ever heard the like, and the princess herself came to the window to listen. The next morning the fairest in the land sent for the old woman and asked her, "Who is that lives with you and plays the zither so well?"
"It's a stranger, princess, who arrived yesterday evening," answered the old woman.
And the princess then commanded that the stranger should be brought to her. When he appeared before the princess, she questioned him about his home and his family, and about this and that, and confessed at length that it was his zither playing that gave her such pleasure, and that she would take him for her husband. The stranger replied that it was with that intent that he had come. The princess then said, "Now you must go to see my father and tell him you desire to have me as a wife. And when he has put the 3 problems before you, then come back and tell me." The stranger then went straight to the king and told him he wished to wed his daughter. And the king answered, "I shall be well pleased, provided you can do what I impose upon you. If not, you will lose your head. Now listen, out there on the ground there lies a thick log, which measures more than 2 fathoms. If you can cleave it in 2 with one stroke of your sword, I will give you my daughter to wife. If you fail, then it will cost you your head." Then the stranger withdrew and returned to the house of the old woman, sorely distressed, for he could believe nothing but the next day he must atone to the king with his head. And so full was he of the idea of how to set about cleaving the log, he forgot even his sister. In the evening came the princess to the window to listen to his playing, and behold, all was still. Then she called to him, "Why are you so cast down this evening, that you did not play on your zither?" And he told her his trouble. But she laughed at it and called to him, "And you must grieve over that? Bring quickly your zither and play something for my amusement, and early tomorrow come to me." Then the stranger took his zither and played the whole evening for the amusement of the princess. The next morning she took a hair from her locks and gave it to him, saying, "Take this hair and wind it around your sword, and then you will be able to cleave the log in two." Then the stranger went forth, and with one blow cleft the log in two. But the king said, "I will impose another task upon you before you can wed my daughter." "Speak on," said the stranger. "Listen, then," answered the king. "You must mount a horse and ride 3 miles at full gallop, holding in each hand a goblet full of water. If you spill no drop, then I shall give you my daughter to wife. But if you do not succeed, then I shall take your life." Then the stranger returned to the house of the old woman, and again he was so troubled that he forgot his zither. In the evening the princess came to the window as before to listen to the music, but again all was still, and she called to him, "What is the matter? You do not play your zither." Then he related all that the king had ordered him to do, and the princess answered, "Do not let yourself be disturbed. Only play now, and come to me tomorrow morning." Then next morning he went to her, and she gave him her ring, saying, "Throw this ring into the water, and it will immediately freeze, so that you will not spill any." The stranger did as the princess bade him, and carried the water all the way. Then the king said, "Now I will give you a third task, and this shall be the last. I have a slave who will fight with you tomorrow, and if you conquer, you shall wed my daughter." The stranger returned, full of joy, to the house of the old woman, and that evening was so merry that the princess called to him, "You seem very cheerful this evening. What has my father told you that makes you so glad?" He answered, "Your father told me that tomorrow I must fight his slave. He is only another man like myself. I hope to subdue him and gain the contest." But the princess answered, "This is the hardest of all. I myself am the slave, for I swallow a drink that changes me into a man of unconquerable strength. Go tomorrow morning to the market, buy 12 buffalo hides and wrap them around your horse. Fasten this cloth around you, and when I am let loose upon you tomorrow, show it to me, that I may hold myself back and may not kill you. Then you will fight me. You must try to hit my horse between the eyes, for when you have killed it, you have conquered me." Next morning, therefore, he went to the market and bought the 12 buffalo hides, which he wrapped around his horse. Then he began to fight with the slave, and when the combat was already lasted a long time, the 11 hides were torn. Then the stranger hit the slave's horse between the eyes, so that it fell dead, and the strong man was defeated. Then said the king, "Because you have solved the 3 problems, I take you for my son-in-law." But the stranger answered, "I have some business to conclude first. In 14 days I will return and bring my bride home." So he arose and went into another country, where he came to a great town, and alighted to the house of an old woman. When he had had supper, he begged her for some water to drink, but she answered, "My son, I have no water. A giant has taken possession of the spring and only lets us draw from it once a year, when we bring him a maiden.
He eats her up and then lets us draw water. Just now it is the lot of the king's daughter, for tomorrow she will be led forth.
The next day, accordingly, the princess was led forth to the spring, and bound there with a golden chain. After all the people went away, she was left alone. When they had gone, the stranger went to the maiden and asked her what ailed her that she lamented so much, and she answered that the reason was because the giant would come to eat her up. Then the stranger promised that he would set her free if she would take him for her husband, and the princess joyfully consented. When the giant appeared, the stranger set his dog at him, and it took him by the throat and throttled him until he died. And so the princess was free. Now when the king heard of it, he gladly consented to the marriage, and the wedding took place with great rejoicings. The young bridegroom abode at the palace 101 weeks. Then he began to find it too dull and desired to go out hunting. The king would fain have prevented it, but he could not succeed. Then he begged his son-in-law at least to take sufficient escort with him, but this too the young man evaded, and took only his horse and his dog. He had ridden already a long way when he saw in the distance a hut, and rode straight towards it in order to get some water to drink. There he found an old woman from whom he begged the water. She answered the first that he should allow her to beat his dog with a little wand, that it might not bite her while she fetched the water. The hunter consented, and as soon as she had touched the dog with her wand, it immediately turned into stone. Thereupon she touched the hunter and also his horse, and both turned to stone. As soon as this happened, the cypress trees in front of his father's house began to wither. And when the older brother saw this, he immediately set out in search of his twin. He came first to the town where his brother had slain the giant, and where the fate led him to the same old woman where his brother had lodged. When she saw him, she took him for his twin brother, and said to him,
"Do not take it amiss of me, my son. I did not come to wish you joy on your marriage with the king's daughter."
The stranger perceived what mistake she had made, but only said that "it does not matter, old woman," and rode on, without further speech, to the king's palace, where the king and the princess both took him for his twin brother, and called out, "Why have you tarried away so long?
We thought something evil had befallen you."
When night came, he slept with the princess, who still believed him to be her husband, and laid his sword between them. When morning came, he rose early and went out to hunt. Fate led him by the same way his brother had taken, and from a distance he saw him and knew that he was turned to stone. Then he entered the hut and ordered the old woman to disenchant his brother, but she answered,
"Let me first touch your dog with my wand, then I will free your brother."
He ordered the dog, however, to take hold of her and bite her up until she cried out,
"Tell your dog to let me go, and I will set your brother free."
But he only answered, "Tell me the magic words that I may disenchant him myself." And as she would not, he ordered his dog to bite up to her hip. The old woman cried out,
"I have two wands. The green one will turn to stone, the red one will bring back to life."
So the hunter took the red wand and disenchanted his brother, and also his brother's horse and his dog, and ordered his dog to eat the old woman up altogether. While the brothers went on their way back to the castle of the king, the one brother related to the other how the cypress tree had all but dried up once it withered, and how he had immediately set out in search of his twin, and how he had come to the castle of his father-in-law and had claimed the princess as his wife. But the other brother became furious on hearing this, and smote him over the forehead until he died, and returned alone to the house of his father-in-law. When night came and he was in bed, the princess asked him, "What was the matter with you last night? You never spoke a word to me." Then he cried out, "That was not me, but my brother, and I have slain him because he told me by the way that he had claimed you for his wife."
you know the place where you slew him?" asked the princess. "And can you find the body?" "I know the place exactly. Then tomorrow we shall ride there," said the princess. Next morning, accordingly, they set out together, and when they came to the place, the princess drew forth a small bottle that she had brought with her, and sprinkled the body with some drops of the water, so that immediately he came alive. When he stood up, his brother said to him, "Forgive me, dear brother, that I slew you in anger." They embraced and went together to the fairest of the land, whom the unmarried brother took to wife. Then the brothers brought their parents to live with them, and dwelt